Sabrina 70s comic, issue 74. The story starts out by confusing the heck out of me because a coach decides to send a woman to try out for the boys' baseball team. Can you see what's wrong with that picture? How did that get past the editor? That's such stupid writing. The female coach says that's because she thinks she's that good, implying that the boys' team is better than the girls' team, and even the female coach knows this. That's very silly of the writer. I wonder if the writer of this comic has even seen a high school female sports team before. The girl thanks Sabrina for wanting to go over with her, and says she doesn't have confidence around boys. She fails to catch the baseball, and Sabrina decides to help her, and says a chant wanting to put Cindy under a confidence spell. Out of nowhere, she gets pulled into another dimension, and a high priestess of animal protectors sarcastically says it's nice of her to drop in. Why did the mirror pull her in there against her will? And why did Sabrina immediately know who that was by the voice alone, completely failing as an audience surrogate? At least this is more interesting than a predictable plot where she makes a character unlikable because they became confident, which you really should have anticipated. Still, couldn't she just make her confident without making her unlikable? Because she's already familiar with how she usually is, and could just imagine her as that? Why was it too simple for her to just point to her and make her confident? Didn't she do that with Harvey? I guess she figures it doesn't work when she does it, so she has to do it a different way. She says that the priestess owes her a favor, and asks her to check her record book. Using a magical computer, she sees that Sabrina rescued her puppy on an iceberg last winter, and on a day when her magical powers weren't working. So Sabrina asks her for animal spirits' help with Cindy. At least this is creative, and she's told to zap at the appropriate time. She's sent out of the mirror as I'm just confused because this is the first time I've ever seen this priestess before. Even then we don't see her, just see her text. This just seems like a bunch of padding that didn't need to exist. Cindy does a great job, and Sabrina shows up to thank the priestess for her help, which at first annoys her because she thinks she just wants another favor. The story ends with Sabrina being shown the boys' baseball team going out with Cindy. That's a happy ending, alright. But I'm still wondering why I can't see this high priestess of the animal kingdom, and what Sabrina was doing in the place where she saved her puppy, which was somehow on Earth, instead of another dimension. Was she there to gather potion ingredients with her aunts again? This place certainly makes an impression, so it was a shame it was wasted on a plot like this, where Sabrina could have done this for Cindy herself. In the next story, Ambrose tells his magic mirror to show him how he'd look in a rock star's outfit. Why doesn't he just zap the outfit onto himself? Luckily for him, the mirror does do that instead of just sucking him into another dimension. Ambrose thinks he'll win a costume party, and I have to wonder if he's being invited to it by witch friends he made in the past in different towns, because we never see him have a social life. He seems to be the protagonist of his own story. Sabrina wishes she was going to a party, and Hilda figures out she's sad based only on seeing her from behind, and thinks she knows how to cheer her up. I guess she doesn't know how, but it's sweet of her to try. She tells the magic mirror to start distorting images the way the mirrors do in carnival houses, and she laughs at seeing her fatter reflection. Fortunately, Hilda tells Sabrina what she did so that she wouldn't freak out and think she transformed. Sabrina's not impressed, and then Ambrose goes up to a woman who wishes she could wear something to the party tonight. He brings her to his mirror, not realizing that it was distorted by Hilda. And somehow the woman doesn't immediately say, "How did I get so fat?" Or at least immediately figure out that this must be a carnival mirror. Ambrose tells the magic mirror to give her an exact copy of the outfits being reflected, and she gets an overly big outfit. Ambrose is confused, and Sabrina says that's what she was trying to say. Somehow, the bitch asks if this is supposed to be a joke and runs after him throwing stuff at him, when clearly he was confused and it was just a mistake on his part. She'd just be confused, not a hothead like she showed no indication of being. Didn't an outfit get magicked up in front of her? Wouldn't she be scared? Not focused on being called fat? At least Sabrina started laughing, but how? The story ends with Ambrose sad, and Hilda gets told not to try the same thing to cheer him up. Logically, Ambrose would make Beatrice forget what happened with his magic. Maybe he'd feel scummy about doing that, too often to his girlfriend. In the next story, which I mistook for a comedy page because of its format at first, Sabrina complains about her locker getting stuck. She somehow expects me to believe that ordinarily she never uses magic at school. If that's the case, then she's more cautious than the 90s comic Sabrina. No wonder we never see any stories with her at school. It's boring, and she could just erase people's memories. So it doesn't matter if she uses magic there. Although, I can only remember Ambrose using magic to erase a memory in the 70s comic. She casts a spell commanding the locker to open, and somehow it breaks off when realistically it would have just opened like it always does, because that's all she would have imagined. Somehow, she can't just point at the locker to put the loose locker door back on its hinges, because it turns out there's an incantation for that and she forgot it. This is a bullshit story. A lot of the time, the comic has something bad happen to Sabrina as a joke, but sometimes it goes too far and just ends up being mean-spirited and frustrating, particularly when it's completely forced. A random guy misses a point and just says it's good that her locker's open because he could put his ant colony project here until biology class. Sabrina says she'll have to leave her locker open and hope nobody takes anything. Hilda would have put a curse on it just in case. Then she remembers she's supposed to interview a teacher in the cafeteria for the school newspaper. Oh, she's working for the newspaper in the 70s comic too. So that was always a part of her character. I wonder if that's where the sitcom got it. She teleports to the cafeteria with a spell, and her sudden appearance startles the old lunch lady into spilling her with soup. Sabrina thinks she can't go around drenched and has to change, rather than just reversing time, or at least instantly drying herself with magic. And since we see that guy from earlier looking at her, I can assume this place has too many people in it for her to just change outfits. But she can erase memories at the point of a finger. She would have all the same powers as Ambrose. She has a chance about getting a new outfit, and the spirit world gives her a beautiful but outdated dress with a hat. Logically, she would have just imagined herself in one of her own outfits and changed it with a single point. Sabrina did that in the sitcom just fine. But no, she doesn't just do that. So she runs to her locker to get a pair of jeans and a t-shirt. Lucky for her, no one actually spots her in that outfit. That outfit was respectable, and those students would have to be really petty and mean to make fun of her for wearing it. It looked better than her outfit now. She goes into a chemistry class, where a teacher says that if it weren't for a steady hand, this could be a dangerous experiment. Then Sabrina realizes that those ants from Roger's project must have escaped and crawled into her jeans. I knew they'd show up again, because it wouldn't be mean enough if they didn't become a problem. She thanks his spell telling the ants to go somewhere else. Okay, it kinda makes sense that the ants got teleported to the teacher because he was the one she was paying attention to, and by constantly talking, he was forcing her to pay attention to him. But there were so many students around. She could have frozen time. I'm not sure I remember her doing that in the 70s comic. But this comic establishes that she can do literally anything. Why should I assume she can't do something? There's a chemical explosion, and he hopes no one was hurt. We don't seem to see any consequences to the students somehow when they're surrounded by gas. And only the teacher has consequences. In the sense that there's a rip in his sleeve and his glasses are off. It seems unrealistic. The story ends with Sabrina expecting me to believe that she learned to never use magic at school again. The 90s comic would be pretty boring if she never used magic at school. Again, she could just reverse this by reversing time. So the moral isn't don't use magic. In the next story, Sabrina reduces herself in size because she's bored. All that would do is make her take a lot longer to get from one side of her room to the other. I guess she ran out of books to read. She borrows a bathing suit from her doll and swims in a goldfish bowl. Oh, for fuck's sake, why did they have a normal text bubble when Sabrina said, "Hi Goldie, underwater"? It could have been a thought bubble. At least her mouth isn't open, but she'd still be gurgling. Good thing that's just one panel. She thinks that at her present size, one chip is a whole big meal. And then the chips fall out of the bag. Somehow, instead of cleaning the mess by just casting a single spell, she wants to turn on the hand vacuum cleaner. I wish she at least explained that she was doing this because it could be more fun. And it tries to suck her in. She can't get her zapping hand free to get her out of this mess. and Salem can't hear her over the noise of the vacuum while a rat's staring at her. Then, because of Salem's playing with the yarn, the vacuum gets unplugged and she's free. I wish he just spotted her and saved her on purpose. That'd be admirable of him. She gets back to normal and hugs her cat, as he fortunately appreciates it. And Hilda's mad at what the cat did to her ball of yarn, which I thought was for the cat. The story ends with Sabrina going out to buy Salem a dozen more balls of yarn. That was an interesting story, even if a character shrieking down is cliché. At least, I think it is, because I've seen it so many times. The first story had a confusing premise that could have easily been made to make sense. Obviously, a woman wouldn't be allowed to join a boys' baseball team. Not to mention the unfortunate implications of the fact that the story just has to reference that the boys' team is better. And even the female coach happily acknowledges this. It is possible that it could be better, but not because they're all boys. They could have easily rewritten the plot in the editing to have both teams be women's teams. And I'd expect Sabrina to be able to make Cindy confident with a spell. Not have to travel to another dimension through a magic mirror that we've never seen, and get help from some high priestess, who intimidatingly refuses to show her face and just talks to her in a booming voice from a mountain. It made an impression. It was nice of Sabrina to have saved her puppy. But it's just a Deus Ex Machina because she had no reason to be there to save the puppy. An intriguing concept ended up being wasted on a plot like this. I don't remember if Cindy being made confident backfired on her. I'm pretty sure it didn't. Sabrina could have easily explained that she thinks she needs her help to make Cindy confident without it backfiring, because she could reference the fact that it backfired when she made Harvey confident. The second story is about Hilda trying to cheer up Sabrina with a mirror distortion spell, and it backfires because Sabrina doesn't undo the spell right after she sees it. So it makes a woman Ambrose brought home look fat in a new outfit. And somehow this makes her furious with him, when he's just as confused as she was. I guess Hilda thought it would be wrong to brainwash her into cheering up. The third story was about Sabrina's magic backfiring on her a lot when she's in school, because the writer forced it to. At least a ton of things happening made the story seem creative, because it was harder to think up. But come on, she wouldn't have failed at opening and closing her locker with magic. And she would have changed her outfit to a normal new one right away with magic. Not needed to get on jeans with ants in them that would cause her to send the ants to the chemistry teacher by accident. Those mistakes were all forced. The fourth story is about Sabrina having fun turning herself really small so that she can swim in the goldfish bowl, and then trying to eat one chip at that size. You'd think she would have done this enough as a kid and gotten bored of it after all the time she was alive, but I guess that would never get boring. It should have been explained that she had run out of books to read, and that's why she did this, and there was nothing on TV that she wanted to watch. Then because she stupidly doesn't just clean up the spilled chips with a single point, and turns on the vacuum instead, she nearly gets sucked into it, with the justification that her pointing hands are being pinned to the vacuum by his vacuuming. So Salem saves her by getting the vacuum unplugged, chasing yarn, and thankfully he'll get rewarded for saving her. I liked seeing the story for the most part. It had a good justification, I guess. But what soured me about the story was how forced it was that she thought turning on the hand vacuum was a good idea when she was small, just to clean up some spilled chips. Who cleans up chips by using a vacuum? She could have turned herself big just to clean that up, and then become small again.